Chancellor, University Council, University Senate, Management Board, and the entire, thank you, USIU-Africa staff and students, and my friend who brought me here today, good morning and happy graduation day. So I have 4 sons that I'm raising, and when I told them I'm coming here today, they said when the camera starts rolling, I need to do like a sort of Gen Alpha pose. So for their sake, you let me do that, then I'll continue with my speech. A story is told, if you don't mind me using this example, of Barack Obama, the president, the previous president of the States, and he was having dinner with his wife in just a simple restaurant somewhere in the States. And during this dinner, of course, you can imagine if you own a restaurant and a president walks in, you make sure you go to their table and tell them, my goodness, thank you for, coming to my restaurant, it's on the house, what can I offer you, etc. And as the owner of the restaurant was doing this, Michelle noticed that he knew him, and he's like, oh my goodness, it's so good to see you. Let's say his name was Peter. Peter, we went to school together. And he's like, yeah, I didn't want to bring it up until you did. And she's like, you are my prom date. And the gentleman is like, yes, with due respect to the president, of course. And, so a few more pleasantries, and the owner of the restaurant left. And Obama goes like, my goodness, you'd have been a restaurant owner's wife. And Michelle goes like, no, you'd have been president. And that's why I want to start my speech today. Because I have a high self-esteem, if you're writing notes about my speech, the first point is attitude. If you listen to what Michelle said, it's just attitude. Really, where is your attitude at? And I think that has been one of my biggest lessons as I get older. I just turned 40. And, so many times when you turn 40, there's like a shake in your life and you're reflecting and thinking about all these things. And I remember going like, if there's something I want to take into my 40s and beyond, my fortified 40s, is attitude. Is your attitude in the right place? What happens when you get a shake-up? Do you go like, okay, my life is done, I'm gonna eat some worms? Or do you sit back and go like, how do I turn this around? So point number 1, attitude. And into my second point, gratitude. I promise my points don't all rhyme, just these 2, gratitude. A friend was telling me that when she graduated, her and her friend came up with a pact, and they told each other, you know what, let's make sure we get married, do our masters, and get a good job. So those 3 things. And so they both set out to life to get married, get a master's, and get a good job. So one of them got married and did their master's. The other one got a good job and did their master's. And so at the end of the day, they sat down one day and they're comparing and they're like, gosh, I feel so bad. I'm aging, I'm not married. And the other one is like, gosh, I'm getting old, I've not done my master's. And when my friend was telling me this story, she's like, at some point it hit her. She just had to learn to just be content, and contentment, it's interesting, is a product of gratitude. But I think with Instagram and Snapchat and, let me say, Facebook for the older people in the room, you find yourselves that you're scrolling through and seeing what your classmate is doing, what your friend in primary school is doing, and you're like, gosh, my life is not where it should be. I just want to remind you that it's so important to be content. I was reading a Harvard Business Review, and it was saying that the same space in your brain that's taken up by fear and worry and concern is the same space taken up by gratitude. So you can imagine you cannot have both of them at the same time. So choose gratitude. Choose to sit down and be like, today is my graduation day. Thank you, Lord, that I made it to this point. Maybe I don't have a job, I don't have a husband or a wife, I don't have children, I just went through a loss, whatever it is, but to choose gratitude. Because I think also when you have gratitude, you have vision. You see further because you're your eyesight is not blurred by darkness. It's not blurred by complaint and you know, just all this concern and worry. So gratitude. And number 3, whatever it takes. I'll give you a story. When I first graduated, and I don't know how many of you are like that, you're like, man, I have done all these studies, you know, I've graduated at the top of my class maybe, or, you know, I just feel like I have all this knowledge, I need to go out and get that big job. And so when I graduated, I remember going for an interview in one of the banks in this country, and at the end of the interview, they're like, I'll be a direct sales representative. So I'm like, with this degree, I'm going to be a direct sales representative. The acronym even sounded worse, DSR. I'm like, no, this is not my portion. And so at the end of the interview, I tell this manager, you know what, if you give me your job, I'll do it better than you're doing it. And you know, it was youth and its folly, really. And I was thrown out of this office and I didn't get that job. But thank God I didn't, because I got something better. But really, at the end of the day, it has to be whatever it takes. Write down your vision. You know, put it down on paper. Put it somewhere where you can see it every day. Because adulting sometimes cleans off that vision. You know, you walk into an interview and you're sent out, you get that regret, one too many, and you're like, let me just pick, you know, whatever job that comes my way. Don't be a just human being, you know, just a job, just barely make it, just a small car. It's okay to dream big, and despite what adulting brings your way, to keep dreaming big. And that's what I want to remind us today in this graduation. When I graduated, I didn't graduate with a technology or tech inclined degree. No, I didn't, but I put it down on my vision. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of the digital revolution. And I started working towards that. And now I'm leading tech, you know, in an organization. And that's just to show you that you can go at what you need to go at, full throttle, and don't hold back, whatever it takes. And on to my next point, the 4th one, remember to raise your hand. You know, so many times, maybe you've done the 844 system where your answers have to be correct. Thank God for USIU-Africa. When I did my master's here, it was a different class environment. You could raise your hand. But, you know, also growing up, you know, you maybe care too much what people think. You don't want someone to tell you, no, that's not the right answer. I'm here to remind you today, raise your hand. When those opportunities come, maybe it's a job, yeah, it has 10 requirements, you meet only 5, just apply, raise your hand, see if you'll get through instead of sitting back and those opportunities pass you by. I remember someone asking me how I got into 4 boards at my age, you know, because most times the people who sit in boards are probably 10 or 20 years my senior. And, you know, it took raising my hand. And I remember when I took up the first board, it was voluntary, and I was like, I want to sit in this board and I want to learn. And from that point, I got in more opportunities. So just here to encourage you today to say yes, to raise your hand, you know, and raise your heart and just be like, you know, I want to take up this opportunity. Let's see where it takes me. So raising your hand. And this next point is so close to my heart. You know what happens with this corporate world, and I look at you and I see so much potential, I see so many open doors and great men and women seated before me. And I wish you all the best as you get started on this journey. But just to remind you that you have to remember that you're human, you know, and there's family, and there's you and self-care, and there's aspects of, you know, spouses and children, because what's happening nowadays is that we focus so much on work, on careers, and we forget ourselves. I was telling someone when we were having breakfast, I took a break last year, but it's because I reached that place where I was like, I'm losing myself, and I pray this comes to pass, but I'm in the process of writing a book. I hope I finish it, and the title is, and I hope you'll applaud it and you'll think the title is good. Wait for it. The title is, When We Break the Glass Ceiling, What Else is Breaking? Will it sell? Yeah. And And I write that because, I grew up like the corporate ladder, but so many times you forget those kids that you're raising, you forget the spouse, you forget yourself. And I was reading somewhere that we reboot our laptops, we put them off, we restart them, but we never do that for ourselves. So to remind you that as you succeed, because you will, remember family. I lost my dad early this year. It completely shattered me, completely, like you have no idea. But one of the things I was grateful for is that I didn't regret spending time with him, that I had made time for him, that I picked up his calls. I remember the last phone call I had with him, I was rushing into a meeting, and he called me and we spoke for 40 minutes. And I keep looking back and I'm like, thank God I picked up that call. Can you imagine if I hadn't? I would have never forgiven myself. So just to remind us, they call it work-life balance. I don't think there's balance, but there's a few things that you can, put in there to be intentional, to remember that children don't only need quantity time, they need quality time, to put your phone aside and scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and spend time with friends and families and just give full attention, to take that road trip home and see your folks, despite the dramas that come with our African homes. Just still make that time. And as I close, just to remind us, God. Let's think of the metal cup. Do we know the metallic cup? Almost every African home has a metallic cup, right? So if you think of that metallic cup, nowadays, I see them being used for decor in homes. But if you go to one of our village homes, like tea does not taste good unless you take it in that metal cup. But I think the person we need to ask what's the ideal use of that metal cup, because it burns your lips. You're like, was this supposed to be for hot drinks, really? The person we need to ask is the person who made that cup, right? And it's the same thing I'd want to tell us. The person who knows your true use, your true purpose is God. Let's not forget, some of us call it our higher power. I call him God. Let's not forget God to figure out what your purpose is. Don't figure it out when you're 60 if you can figure it out now. Just spend time quiet by yourself and ask, why am I really here? What did God make me for? So that like just that metal cup, if really you're for hot tea to burn people's lips, by all means, you leave that. I'm currently reading a book, and this is my final closing, I promise. I'm reading a book called Tuesdays with Maury, a beautiful book. Please write it down, and if you can get it, read it. And this man was a lecturer in one of the large universities globally. And he walks into a hospital because he's not feeling well. And the doctor gives him a scary diagnosis. And as he is leaving the hospital, the doctor tells him, I don't even know if you have 3 months to live. And so he walks out and stands outside, like the entrance of the hospital, and is looking at the road and just seeing people moving on. And he's like, doesn't the world know what I've been diagnosed with? And he was broken, and he's like, all hope is gone. And at that point, he sat back and told himself, I will make this 3 months the best 3 months of my life. And the book goes ahead to talk about the impact he had in the world for those few months he had as his body deteriorated to this disease. And that's to remind us that this world will throw tough things at us, completely tough, that will break you. But please, despite what this world throws at you, every morning, wake up, sit up on your bed, and go like, I'm gonna make this the best year of my life, the best week of my life, the best, month of my life. And, it doesn't matter if you've hit your resolutions and the year is coming to an end, but just like this book states, just make it the best years of your life. And one of the best quotes in this book says, rejection is redirection. You lose your job, you want to get married to this lady, she rejects you. Whatever it is, rejection is redirection. Wake up every morning and go like, this is going to be the best day of my life. I wish you all the best, God's blessings. Go out, be great. I'll be waiting to read about your stories in the papers. God bless you.